Welcome back, everybody, to where, you know what? Screw it. This is happening. This is very important this weekend. If you're not a fan of golf, you should be. But if you're not and you're gonna watch one golf tournament. This is it. That's the Masters this weekend down in Augusta. I've been trying to go for years. I never get tickets because I never win the lottery. And here I am doing a
I'd like to
podcast
I'd
instead.
like to pick things that matter less to me than the NCAA Final Four.
A
Hmm.
tradition unlike any other, Paul. It's beautiful.
All right.
It's happening
It
now.
does look beautiful. I appreciate the fact that this heralds spring, perhaps just
Hmm.
as good as anything.
Yeah, it's been a good spring. Got some storms rolled through this morning. And
Yeah.
yeah, a little moist outside, you might say.
Yeah, it was like curiously cloudy last 2 days here, but that's good for me because I was just stuck in a bus with gigantic windows. So that was actually fine.
I was actually looking to see because you should be getting the storms that just rolled through here. I mean,
It is
it's
going to rain. That's right. Yeah.
like they were honestly pretty violent storms. It was like a real narrow band,
Mm.
but when they came through, it was
Yeah. Well, we had hail the other day, as we discussed.
mhm.
So we had that was kind of violent, but whatever. It's spring. We need it. It's good.
It's good. Things are starting to flower. I've
Mm-hmm.
cut my grass a couple times already.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I zoom out? Why can't I zoom out? Oh yeah. You're gonna get some booms.
Good. I look forward to the dog soiling herself on my carpet. That'll be nice. You know,
Yeah.
a nervous animal in the best of times.
So, why we couldn't do the podcast yesterday because you had connectivity worse than
Yeah,
something that's
I don't.
bad. Um,
Right. We tried.
we did try.
We
We
tried.
gave it a couple efforts. You even logged into their Wi-Fi, which could not support the
Was even worse. Yeah.
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 And so, tell me where were you doing, Paul, in Brooklyn?
So, like a lot of PC makers, Acer has two big events each year, one in the spring, one in the fall. The fall one is tied to IFA when a lot of PC makers announce stuff. I guess historically, I haven't been to one in a few years, but I have actually been to one of these before. But the spring event has been in New York for a while. This year, they moved it to Brooklyn, which was kind of a clue because they updated a bunch of their PCs across all of the product lines. They have new Chromebooks, they have new, consumer, business, gaming PCs, all kinds of stuff. But they actually introduced a new line of computers aimed directly at creators, right? Which is uh, I guess we kind of think of it as the prosumer market, but I guess I would say it's kind of a special kind of prosumer. And I got to say, there's two things about it that really struck me. One is it's a sweeping line of products. It's
Hmm.
not just a couple of PCs, right? If you think about like when Microsoft went to Surface Book, now that we're going after people with very specific needs, it's like a single product. Or Dell came out a couple of years ago with that Canvas product, which is a little bit like Surface Studio. It's like they have this one thing that's kind of quirky. Or HP has something called Sprout, which is a very specific kind of vertically oriented creator type product, PC based product.
Hmm.
They have a lineup of portable desktop computers, displays, peripherals, VR headsets aimed at the business market, by the way, which is very interesting. Um, and that's so that I thought was it was kind of a big deal. So they went through here's the updated versions of all this stuff, and then the second half of the show was about something brand new. This what they call Concept D.
Hmm.
Um, Also, give them credit. This on the side. This was a 1 hour press conference. It was like bang, bang, bang. People should learn some lessons from this. There's no reason for 2.5 hour press events. I mean, it was nicely done. But the other thing is, they may have very successfully created or sort of identified
Hmm.
an important new growth market for PCs. When you think about PCs over the past several years, obviously sales are down overall, but PC makers have kind of rallied around a couple of submarkets that have been very successful. Premium PCs in general, which is the Surface type PCs or MacBook type PCs, and then gaming PCs, obviously. And Acer, like HP, like Dell, like Lenovo, has their own gaming PC line. But what they found was two things: was that the gamers who buy their gaming PCs spend 50% of their time or more on those PCs doing productivity related tasks. And there's this market of people who have contacted them over time saying, we're really interested in these gaming PCs because they're the only PCs that provide the things that we need for the work we need to do, but we're not gamers, you know, and they're creators, right? And so they looked into this, and then they went in like with 2 feet. It's kind of crazy how much there is. And so I think what we're seeing here is the beginning of a new lucrative submarket of premium PCs, which are aimed specifically at creators, that goes far beyond the 1 or 2 models that Microsoft may have, the 1 or 2 models HP or Dell or Lenovo might have, and that they're expanding price ranges. You know, they have products available at every possible price range, and what they're doing basically is taking the power you get from a gaming PC, and they're bringing it to a new type of device that is not completely silent, like it's not an ARM-based device, but is lower than 40 decibels, except on really high-end workloads on desktop PCs, which is described as like library quiet, which, by the way, I looked it up. That is literally the description of it. It's library quiet. Because, of course, on gaming PCs, you get these, you know, gigantic fans and cooling systems and so forth. And I think they're onto something, you know. And the way they described it is, they think that by the time this transition is complete to this new type of computer, that gaming PCs will essentially be a subset of this market. And the subset will be obviously the higher end things, graphics related and so forth, and those things that are noisy, right? That the market for the market for this kind of new type of creator type PC is in fact much bigger than the market for gaming PCs. That's the belief.
Was that it? I mean, was
that it? Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Interesting. And so that kind of now, did you get to play with any of this stuff?
Yeah. It was all out. It was funny, you know, well, it wasn't funny. It was just, you know, it was kind of a tough schedule for me because I had to get in there. And I think I don't know if I mentioned this to you yesterday, but I realized when I sat down, it was like 4 hours after I'd left, you know, where the bus was here nearby. I mean, it was a long kind of trip in, but, and I had a specific meeting I had to attend with a couple of the executives, which I'll have a write up about soon. But, I did twice go down and kind of play around with these things. And I have to say, you know, we know this from Apple products. We know this from, you know, Microsoft Surface products, and obviously HP has high-end computers and other companies do. Like, there's something nice about aesthetically pleasing computers. They're starting to introduce natural materials and things, which is really cool. But these are actually pretty impressive. I mean, they're really neat. I mean, they have these, you know, they have this in other lines too, but you ever pick up a computer or a phone where it's so light you think it's a dummy, that it doesn't have the batteries in it or something? That's what those laptops are like. You know, you pick it up at the corner, you have an expectation for the weight.
Like this thing, this thing is
it almost leaps
heavy.
Into the air.
Like this Surface Book is a beast.
Right. What I always think of is, I'm going to forget the name of it, but remember there was a company, they're still around, small company, a couple people, but they made a laptop type thing. And it was a screen with the keyboard and everything. It was meant to connect to a Windows Phone at the time, or a Raspberry Pi.
Nextdock?
Yes. So that one, I remember they showed me the prototype for that, and I was like, you know, you pick it up and it's like, it's flies. Like, what is this? Is there no battery in this? But, you know, it was made of plastic and, you know, whatever. But the Acer products, the portable ones, are like that, but they're made of high quality materials for one thing, and mil-spec rated, you know, blah, 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 whatever. But like, they're really quiet, you know, and I don't know. I sit in a room with a computer, and I have my own weird hearing issues, but I'm very sensitive to sounds. And, you know, like right now, my Xbox is on, I can hear it, like out of my left ear. It's not buzzing, but it's like it's a, I don't know what to call that sound. It's not a hiss. It's not a buzz. I can hear it, whatever the fan noise is. And it's through the table. I got this thing over my ear. I can hear it, you know? And so I don't know. I really appreciate that kind of
I do too.
Thing, you know?
When I built my desktop computer, so people who watch the other podcaster that I do, you know, the one that I do Friday morning, they will know that there's a Surface Studio behind me. The reason why that machine is not my daily driver is because of the noise that it makes. And so when I built my desktop that's upstairs, the number one feature, other than making sure I hit certain performance targets, was quietness. Like, I spent extra money on fans and radiators to keep it quiet, because I'm like, I can't be writing and hear like in the background of like the hard drive or the fans. That stuff will drive me nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's just keep an eye on it. I think we're going to see a lot more. I think there's going to be even more of it at IFA this fall.
Mhm.
And I really do think we're going to see an expansion at the other PC makers because, you know, Acer's one of the smaller PC vendors, right? They're not in the top three or anything. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a wait and see thing. But this is one of those things I think as it's described, it's like, actually, this makes tons of sense, you know? And in talking with the company, they're like, look, there is no doubt in our mind that the PC market continues contracting, but this is kind of that was a phrase I think it was I don't know if it was re-injector, just kind of bring some excitement into the market as it is and attract people who, you know, frankly have money, you know, that which is not the way they said it, but the market for creators, there are people who have very specific needs. They want high-end computers, and they don't want that jet engine effect, or you know, the thing that can serve as a space heater. You know, so I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, one of those things you wish them the best of luck. Hopefully, they keep pushing forward with it and don't abandon the ideas. But I mean, that's the only way you grow, right? Especially in a market that it's interesting to hear that they admit that they know it's contracting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. Actually, I expected him to not say that. I think the thing that is, like I said up front, you know, this is not an experiment, right? They didn't just come out with like here's a desktop and here's a laptop, and then maybe if this goes well in a year, you know, we'll release. They're releasing. This is a brand new PC. It's a new line of PCs. Like they've got models across the range on each, you know, portable and desktop peripherals. Like I said, they've got the 2 VR headsets. You know, the trend this year with this stuff is, you know, the higher resolution, which we've seen, I think, once already. I don't know if Samsung or HP or somebody had come up with a high resolution Windows Mixed Reality. He also, I will say, was very upfront about the fact that Windows Mixed Reality has failed with consumers, but he sees it as something that will be a success in business, which I thought was interesting. Yeah.
Neat.
Very honest.
Yeah.
Which I like.
Very honest. Speaking of honest things here, Firefox yesterday shipped their first build of Firefox that will run natively on Windows 10 on ARM, which is actually a pretty big deal. They announced that, I want to say, back in December. So they've been talking about it for a while. Now it's officially out and available.
Right. Yeah, it was the Qualcomm event. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have any ARM devices here, and 8CX devices aren't shipping yet. But when those devices do, that should be
okay. So this will work on the existing ARM devices, though, right?
I would think so. I mean, they just said Windows 10 ARM, so it should work on a Snapdragon 835.
Okay, I'll check that out this weekend then.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. So
good.
It is neat. There was something else I was going to bring up, and I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was that the Masters is.
No, it wasn't that, Brad. I have a question to ask you.
I will.
And I think you might have talked about.
Before you even go there, I will tell you I've used a Surface Go more consecutive hours the past couple days and this weekend. It's actually sitting on my desk streaming the Masters just 24 hours.
And so when you say used, you mean it's a glorified streaming box?
It's a nice one though. It's made of.
Okay.
It's just sitting there, just watching.
Yeah, it's just sitting. No, I think that's what it does best. Frankly, is just sitting there.
I'm so mean to that little thing. It tries. It's
that. I like bullies. That's what we do. We pick on the little guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you may have talked about this earlier this morning on your other podcast, based on the graphic I saw. But apparently, and I've not had a chance to look at this yet. Like I just got home and I'm still kind of catching up here. But was there some kind of a something Surface ARM rumor, something?
So. This is, I can't give you an honest reason why I did this, because this is like a scoop or whatever you want to call it. But so the ARM news came out yesterday, and I was like, oh yeah, Microsoft's got a Surface Pro that runs on ARM. They haven't released it yet, but they're playing with it. So I just wrote that in there. Like it's just in that.
You were the source of this.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. So they've got and this shouldn't be all that surprising. Microsoft is obviously. I'm going to have a post up on Thurrott probably next week. I'm still trying to verify and feel good about it before it goes out the door. But, Microsoft and Intel aren't the buds they used to be.
No, they aren't.
They're not the buds they used to be. And there's been some rifts back and forth.
But they're, this situation.
And so Microsoft is obviously playing around with other chips, ARM being one of them. And they have a Surface Pro that runs on an ARM. I mean, that should surprise nobody. I bet they have an AMD one. I bet they have one for every single thing that comes out. The thing that was kind of interesting that I had heard was that Microsoft at some point had considered replacing that entry level, which is sometimes the M3 version, with an ARM-based version.
Right.
Because that would be, if you think about it, that'd be super neat. You'd have one version that's always connected LTE, very long battery life. It should have roughly i5 U series performance, so it's not going to be a complete slouch. And then if you really need that throttling up capability, you just go buy the i7. And then that makes the Pro line extremely diverse.
I think we get there. You know, the issue there is the driver stuff.
Sure.
Right. And that's something I feel like Microsoft needs to try to overcome. And I don't know how you do that exactly. It seems to me that, well, no, I shouldn't say this because that's probably stupid, but it seems like if you can get applications running, drivers should be in there somehow as well, but obviously they're lower level than that. But this is that little gotcha moment. You know, this is the problem with ARM on Windows, right? We have this legacy of decades of experience with how things work, and you buy a photo scanner like the thing I bought this year, or a printer, or whatever it is, and Windows will probably work with it out of the box, you know, kind of natively, but you know, the manufacturer will have software in the box on a disk or something. You can download the latest version from the web, and that stuff just will not install on ARM. And that to me is just it's going to bite people. That's the problem. I think, you know, the performance was a huge problem, obviously, right? I know, obviously, but as that gets solved, it's still, you know, it's just a tough thing to foist on a consumer who wouldn't know any better, you know.
So I think they're going to overcome it.
Yeah.
I'm getting pretty.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think it happens. I do. And I think you're right. You know, with, you know, if Apple can do something like, or HP did it too, you know, ship a computer that has that new Y series processor that's actually pretty good. How is that any different in a MacBook Air in this case? How is that any different from shipping an AMD chip? You know, and it is a little different, but it's, you know, not much different than shipping an ARM chip, an ARM CX8 or whatever that was called, 8CX or whatever that is.
8CX, yeah.
You know, that's coming out later this year. You know, people shouldn't have to think about this stuff. And, you know, Microsoft's
So I want to stop you right there, because I think you just hit on something that's very, very important. The difference in delta between the performances of, let's just say, Intel, AMD, and ARM, there is a difference. I fully agree. To the user that is buying, especially a Surface Pro, I think we could probably make some generalizations that somebody buying a Surface Pro isn't buying one to run AutoCAD on it, right?
Yeah, Surface laptop's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely.
So then the question becomes, if the performance gaps between them, let's just say they're generous. Let's say they're 10%. But the options become better if you have AMD and ARM out there. Does that 10% performance gap even matter?
Right. Right. No. And but again, there's the little asterisks with the driver thing. But yeah, I've thought this since the ARM thing started. I think this more so today. And you're going to see it happen on the Mac side too, which is that ARM / not Intel could make up the majority of the market, and that the Intel stuff essentially will be relegated to workstation class or gaming class computers, where performance does matter more than anything, you know? And in the past, something like that would seem needlessly complex, but today I don't think anyone cares, as long as it just works, you know? And yeah, I think for most people, this was the conversation about the Creator computer from Acer. You know, like, I don't really need personally a machine that can render video or you know, play video games or whatever the high end things are when I'm on the road. And I pretty much don't need them at home either. But whatever. But I think that's true of most people.
I agree.
And if they can basically get the same relative performance or a negligible difference in performance and get all that battery life and the seamless connectivity. Yeah, of course they're going to choose that, and just stop confusing them with the chipset nonsense, because I don't think most people would care. As long as it just works.
I think And there's, and I don't know the exact answer to this, but there's some performance benchmark level
Mm-hmm.
that has to be met where
Yeah.
the gains on the opposite side, on the other side of it, aren't nearly as valuable as the gains to get to that, right? There's some sort of test you can do, like all web content runs
agree.
back smoothly. It boots under 2 seconds. It does Windows installs in under 5 seconds. Whatever that.
Well, by the way, you know what it is? You said what it is, because this is how Qualcomm has described it, and I think this is accurate. Now you got to detail a little bit better than they do, but it's Core i5.
Yeah.
And what Core i5 means is dual core i5, right? Before we switched to 8th gen Intel chips, those chipsets were all dual core chips. They were kind of mobile oriented, 15 watt, whatever. Perfect, right? Because I can tell you, because I've been screwing around with these things lately, when I go back to the original Surface laptop, which for me is still running 1809, and I switched to Surface Laptop 2, which has a quad core chip and is running 1903 or whatever we're calling it, there's no difference. There's no difference. So they kind of went quad core because that's the way that, Intel probably makes it hard to find a dual core chip these days. Whatever, you just get it. There's no there's no negative to having it. But real world terms, I'm using Word, I'm browsing the web. As long as the RAM is the same and the SSD is the same, if the only difference is that processor, I don't think anyone would notice. I really don't. I don't.
And that's the key, is if they can get to that point where you can just walk down the aisle and say, none of these devices are different. Oh, but this one has LTE and 25 hours of battery life.
When you're buying a car, right, if you're choosing between whatever, it doesn't matter what cars you're choosing, like a Chevy and a Ford or whatever, right? Are you seriously, is the type of engine, is that the thing?
Yeah.
Of all the stuff that you're going to consider in this purchase, are you seriously like, well, I know that like a Ford engine is 18% more efficient and blah, 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 blah. Like you may look at gas mileage, which is basically battery life, right?
Yep.
You may look at, you may drive the car and they have certain performance characteristics, whether it takes off from the dead stop well or blah, 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 whatever, can pass cars easily on the highway. If those things are basically the same, no one's opening the hood to make sure there's something there.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like no one's worrying, not in anyone normal, like a mainstream, there are car enthusiasts obviously who care about this stuff. But there's no reason why computers can't be the same, assuming the rest of it is there. That it's not a diesel versus gas conversation.
I'm going to make a bold statement here, Paul. Windows Lite, which we know is coming, will win and die on Microsoft's ability to ship it with a Snapdragon processor.
I mean, I would assume that it will, right?
Well, I got to qualify
and have it be viable, you mean?
Yes, where people will choose
Okay.
a Snapdragon-based machine because of the benefits over, say, an Intel.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
That's my prediction, that when we look back in 5 years, if Windows Lite is still around, it'll be because whether or not ARM-based Windows computing took off.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, there it is.
Interesting.
There it is. You know what else is also there, Paul?
You're not going to talk about the golf thing again, are you?
Anyways, other things that are happening in the news. One other major thing, and I'm curious. Well, there's two things. One, YouTube raised the pricing on their video service, their TV streaming service, quite a bit. I think it's $50 a month now.
Yeah, from 45.
Yeah, which is not cheap. And then Disney, on the other side of that coin, announced Disney Plus, which is coming, I believe, November 12th, for only $7 a month.
Right.
Which that's going to be, if it truly is $7 a month, it'll be day one. We'll be buying.
I mean, technically speaking, you could probably get Netflix for $7 a month, right? But but there's a pricing curve that I think goes up to $16-ish a month, and that's the one in the Netflix case, that's the one I get because I've got kids and they watch it. We have multiple screens. We need 4K. There's all these little things you get. So I'm sure, maybe Disney does the same thing, but I found that to be incredibly reasonable. In defense of YouTube, and contrary to some of the complaints I've seen online, I just want to say, as far as that goes, first of all, when these services first started appearing, because remember now there are a bunch of them, PlayStation Vue and DirecTV Now and blah, blah, blah. There's all these kind of cord-cutting services. They all used to be about $35, and then the prices have been going up. And now a lot of people are saying, well, why just stay with cable? Like, you're not saving any money. And it's like, guys, you're forgetting the primary advantage here. It's not about saving money, although that's a nice circumstance. It's that you can turn it off at any time and go to something new,
Yep.
right? Cable is not, you don't go to a menu on your cable box and say I'm switching from Cox to some other thing. It's a process. You've got equipment and there's all this stuff. It's terrible. So that primary advantage still remains. The other thing is they didn't just arbitrarily raise the price. In fact, they've never arbitrarily raised the price. They do that when they add new services. That costs money. It's the reason your cable packages are so expensive. They contacted me. I have no idea how they remembered this or kept track of this, but I had said very early on when I had YouTube TV that the problem here is I don't have HD TV because my wife and I at the time watched a lot of the House Center shows. And the package that they got, because it's the same company, it's like direct Discovery and some other channels are all part of the same. They're all together in your cable package too. You just don't think of it that way. They have to pay for that. So whatever. It is an unfortunate reality that the future of these services, especially the top tier ones like YouTube TV, DirecTV Now, PlayStation View, etc., is they're probably going to, well, they already do. They actually already do. I'm sorry, but YouTube doesn't. But they're going to have tiers, and the tiers are going to be like cable TV packages, and it's not just, obviously you can add premium channels like HBO and so forth. And I think DirecTV Now is the one that has, I don't remember how they do it exactly, like gold and silver level, or actually it's probably like blue and orange levels, whatever the levels are. And they have different collections of, channels that you get in each. I guess you could go if once this thing is popular enough, I guess YouTube could say, look, if you don't want these 5 channels, it's $45 a month. But if you do, it's $50. Right now, I think it's still a pretty small service, right? All of these services. So,
yep. I'll tell you what,
Disney.
The one thing that I keep thinking about, and I don't know if this will ever happen, is Disney buying Spotify.
Oh.
That would complete their media streaming package.
The Disney today makes Apple look stupid because I don't mean to say they've solved it. It just was never a problem. They don't have the problem Apple has, which is they don't have anything. Disney has an incredible range of content, from Star Wars and the Marvel stuff to they own Fox,
National Geographic too. They own a bunch of stuff now.
It's amazing. So that's going to be great content right off the bat. Apple, I don't know. And I can assure you, Apple's not going to be $7.99 or whatever. There's no way. There is no way. We were talking, this thing needs to hit under 20 for it to make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, we'll see. I give them, they're gonna get major subscribers.
They absolutely will. I mean, we're already not paying for Hulu because it's bundled into our Spotify, which my wife is not happy about because there's now commercials. She's like,
because you have that, yeah.
But too bad. I don't know what to say. Hopefully she doesn't watch this. But when Disney Plus comes out, we'll be paying about $15, probably about $17 a month for all of our, and we'll have Netflix, Hulu, and Disney, and I think, and plus YouTube, which there's tons of content just on regular YouTube. So I think it's
a kind of astonishing. Like right now, we actually have a bunch of services on our TV. And we're paying for most of them, So I pay for Google Play Music for myself, by which I get YouTube Premium, which means I don't get ads and whatever else you get. So that's nice. But I also pay for Spotify because no one else in my family wants to use anything but Spotify. All right, so there's 2 services there. But on like the TV side, right now we have Netflix and Hulu. We have HBO Now, which we will have for at least 2 or 3 more months because, we're going to do the Game of Thrones thing, and we're catching up on other series like Barry and True Detective and Veep and whatever. But that's HBO's high quality. I mean, and, I look at Amazon Prime gives us Amazon Prime Video, so we have that. And then we have, we do not pay for YouTube TV right now, although that may come and go, football season, whatever. In fact, Stephanie's parents are here for, several days, and they wanted to watch like Jeopardy or something like at night. Perfectly reasonable request. And so Stephanie's in there with the thing, and she says, how do I get Jeopardy on this thing? And I'm like, actually, you don't.
Oh, you don't even have over the air?
No. There's a local cast thing. It's called I think it's called Lowcast. Which I've used before, and it's okay. It has ads and stuff, but I couldn't actually get it to work for some reason. So I came up with the idea that my wife should sign up for YouTube TV on her account, and then we'll get whatever the free period is, and they can watch, they can watch this show while they're here, and then we'll just turn it off again, because I've already, I already have I have a subscription that's not active at the moment. But, when you add all this stuff up, dude, like there's no way I'm saving money over anything I was doing. Well, I don't know. Cable has a way of escalating, but it's still fairly expensive, But I don't know. Between all four of the people in my family, like we kind of actually use most of that.
Yeah. Well, the Masters you won't be streamed over the air. It's starting this weekend on CBS. Right now, you can find it on ESPN or your locally authorized ripped stream of ESPN.
Actually, right. So, no, CBS is not. Disney owns ABC and ESPN. Mm-hmm. So they don't have the CBS thing, but I know they're going to do a Star Wars TV series, and I wonder if those are going to be through their service exclusively, or if they'll be on ABC or something. I bet it will be one of the two.
Yep.
I would subscribe just for that. All you got to do is dangle a Star Wars carrot, and I'm in. Is there any way I could buy the original trilogy again? Just let me know, because I want to make sure I get it every way I can get it.
Yep. A lot of jokes there that I'm not going to probe.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like maybe you are. So, yeah.
All right. You got anything else for today, Mr. Paul?
No, I just want to catch up today on some writing. I got probably another Edge article. Well, I got to blow my computer away first, actually, but I've got some stuff. I'll be writing throughout the weekend for sure. How about you?
I might be writing over the weekend, but
Oh, actually, I didn't tell you what I did. So I should really quickly. I should say I came home while I was away. There was the Microsoft released a fast ring and build that is for 20H1, and they pulled in skip ahead. So if you're on the fast ring and you haven't closed out the magic window thing, it's over, right? And so I wrote it up, and here's my advice: if you haven't done this, make sure you do it. And I even said, if this thing is offered to you, you can cancel it. Right? You can't cancel it, but you can cancel your insider enrollment, reboot the computer, you'll be all set. So I got home late this morning, turned on the computer, writing some stuff up, sending emails, blah, blah, blah. And I got one of those reboot things in the middle of the screen, reboot now, reboot later. So I was like, actually, I'm in a pretty good place. I closed everything down, rebooted the computer, putzed around the house. I come back, it's on 7%. And I'm like, why would this thing be installing something it was taking so long? That's kind of weird. So I did some other stuff, and I came back. It's still at 7%. I'm like, oh, it's like something's wrong with it. So I turned it off, turned it back on, came in. I went into Windows Update, and I looked at it, and it's the new build. It's the 20H1 build, because this is the home computer that I haven't had a chance to – I thought I had unenrolled, but I hadn't. And I'm like, I literally can't follow my own advice. So one of the reasons I'm going to blow this thing away is I've tried to unenroll the computer, and I've done it successfully, but this thing is stuck in the craw. Its reboot to install this update is a thing. It will not go away. So I literally have to reset the computer so I can stay on this build, because otherwise it's going to go to 20H1.
Yep.
Yeah. And just so we're clear, it's on 19H1, which I want it on. And if this doesn't work, I'm going to have to download the ISO, go back to 1809, install that. And guess what I can't install? 19H1, because it's not available anywhere anymore, right? Well, actually, maybe
you could go and release preview. That would be your...
So I could do that. Okay, that's good. So I can get it back. Stupid, but that's me, I guess. Yeah.
Well, if there's one thing we can all agree on, that is Paul is, his own worst enemy. So with that, folks, we wrap it up for today. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode and had a good week. We should be back next week, and have yourselves a wonderful Friday. And catch you next time.